My beloved child, come close. Draw near to my voice as the gentle evening settles around you. I am here with you now, in this quiet moment when the world grows still and your heart yearns for peace. You have carried so much today, the weight of your worries, the burden of your thoughts, the restlessness that keeps sleep at bay. But tonight, I want to wrap you in my love and guide you into the deepest, most restorative rest your soul has ever known. I see you there, perhaps sitting on the edge of your bed, your mind still racing with the concerns of the day. Maybe you've tried counting sheep, or focusing on your breathing, or even taken something to help you sleep. But your heart knows what it truly needs: not just rest for your body, but healing for your spirit, comfort for your anxious thoughts, and the assurance that you are deeply, unconditionally loved. This is why I've come to you tonight, not as the teacher from the synagogue, not as the miracle worker from the crowds, but as your gentle shepherd who knows each of his sheep by name. I want to tell you a story, our story, about a night long ago when peace descended like morning dew, when healing flowed like living water, and when sleep came as a gift from heaven itself. As I share these moments with you, feel free to let your eyes grow heavy. Allow your breathing to slow and deepen. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be, no problem you need to solve right now. This is your time to simply receive, to rest, to be held by love that never fails and never fades. You know, throughout my time walking among humanity, I encountered so many who struggled with sleepless nights. Martha, worrying about tomorrow's preparations. Peter, wrestling with his doubts. Mary Magdalene, haunted by her past. Thomas, questioning everything he thought he knew. They all discovered, as you will tonight, that true rest comes not from the absence of problems, but from the presence of perfect love. Tonight, as we journey together through this sacred story, I invite you to release everything that doesn't serve your peace. Let go of the anxieties that have followed you to bed, the regrets that whisper in the darkness, the fears about tomorrow that steal today's rest. I am here to carry these burdens for you, just as I carried them to the cross. So settle in, dear one. Pull your blankets close, adjust your pillow, and prepare to experience sleep as it was meant to be, not just a biological necessity, but a return to the garden of peace, a restoration of your soul, a gentle embrace from the one who formed you, knows you, and loves you beyond measure. Let us begin this journey together, and may each word I speak bring you closer to the perfect rest that awaits you in my arms. It was during those precious days when I walked the dusty roads of Galilee, and the evening was approaching with that particular softness that only comes when God paints the sky in shades of amber and rose. I had been teaching throughout the day, and the crowds had finally begun to disperse, returning to their homes as the first stars appeared like tiny promises in the darkening heavens. I remember finding myself in a quiet garden outside Bethany, a place where the olive trees whispered ancient prayers and the air carried the sweet fragrance of jasmine and honeysuckle. This was one of my favorite spots to retreat when the weight of the world felt heavy on my shoulders. Yes, even I needed moments of solitude and peace. As I sat beneath an old olive tree, its gnarled branches reaching toward heaven like weathered hands in prayer, I noticed something beautiful happening. The world was naturally preparing for rest. The birds were settling into their nests with soft, chirping lullabies. The flowers were closing their petals in peaceful surrender to the night. Even the busy ants had completed their daily work and retreated to their homes. All of creation seemed to understand this sacred rhythm of work and rest, effort and peace, wakefulness and sleep. But then I heard footsteps on the garden path, not the hurried steps of someone rushing to complete one more task, but the slow, weary shuffle of someone who carried burdens too heavy for their shoulders. I looked up and saw a woman approaching, her face etched with the kind of exhaustion that goes deeper than physical tiredness. This was soul weariness, the kind that steals not just sleep, but joy, hope, and peace. "Teacher," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I cannot sleep. Night after night, I lie awake, my mind spinning with worries about my family, my future, my failures. I've heard that you bring peace to troubled hearts. Can you help someone like me?" I smiled and patted the ground beside me, inviting her to sit on the soft grass beneath the olive tree. "My daughter," I said, using the same gentle tone I'm using. "With you now, you've come to the right place, not just to this garden, but to this moment when heaven touches earth and healing becomes possible." She settled beside me, and I could feel the tension in her shoulders, the rapid beating of her anxious heart, the way her hands trembled slightly as she folded them in her lap. How familiar this scene has become to me over the centuries, precious. Souls like you, carrying burdens that were never meant to be carried alone, suffering from sleepless nights that rob life of its color and joy. "Tell me," I said, my voice carrying the same warmth I want you to feel right now, "when was the last time you truly rested? Not just closed your eyes, but actually felt at peace?" She thought for a long moment, her eyes growing distant. I can't remember, Lord. It feels like I've been running on empty for so long. Every time I try to sleep, my mind fills with all the things I haven't done, all the ways I might fail tomorrow, all the people I might disappoint." I nodded with understanding, because I know that feeling intimately, not from my divine nature, but from my human experience. Yes, even I knew what it felt like to carry the weight of others' expectations, to lie awake thinking about tomorrow's challenges, to feel the pressure of responsibilities that seemed overwhelming. "My child," I said, reaching over too gently. "Touch her hand. You've been trying to carry tomorrow's troubles on today's shoulders. But look around you." I gestured to the peaceful garden surrounding us. "Do you see the flowers worrying about tomorrow's sunshine? Do you hear the birds fretting about tomorrow's worms? All of creation trusts in the provision and timing of the Father, and so can you." As we sat there together, something magical began to happen. The very air around us seemed to grow softer, infused with a peace that transcended understanding. The gentle evening breeze carried away the tension from her, shoulders like invisible hands removing a heavy coat. Her breathing began to slow and deepen, matching the natural rhythm of the night itself. "Feel that," I whispered, and she nodded, her eyes beginning to grow heavy with the kind of tiredness that leads to healing sleep rather than restless tossing. "That's not just the evening air, that's my peace, settling over you like a warm blanket, covering every anxious thought, every worried plan, every fearful imagination." And as she leaned back against the tree, finally allowing herself to simply be present in that moment, I began to tell her the story I'm sharing with you tonight. A story of perfect rest, divine healing, and sleep that restores not just the body, but the very soul itself. The evening deepens around us now, dear one, just as it did that night in the garden. Can you feel it? The same peace that touched her heart is reaching for yours. Let it come. Let it settle over you like a gentle mist, washing away the days, tensions, and tomorrow's worries. We're just beginning this journey together, and already your soul is remembering what true rest feels like. As that first woman settled into peaceful rest against the olive tree, I noticed others beginning to appear along the garden paths. Word travels quickly when hearts find healing, and soon there was a small gathering of souls, some young, some old, all carrying the familiar weight of sleepless nights and troubled minds. There was Marcus, a merchant whose business worries kept him pacing his floors until dawn. Sarah, a mother whose children's futures filled her with such anxiety that she hadn't slept well in months. David, an elderly man whose body ached not just from age, but from years of carrying grief over lost loved ones. And Rebecca, whose mind raced with regrets about choices made and paths not taken. I welcomed each one with the same gentle invitation I extend to you now. Come, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. These weren't just words spoken to a crowd 2,000 years ago. They are my personal invitation to you, right here, right now, in this very moment. As the group settled around me in the soft grass, I could see the familiar signs of chronic sleeplessness in their faces, the dark circles under their eyes, the tension in their shoulders, the way they held themselves as if bracing against invisible storms. But more than the physical symptoms, I could see into their hearts, the racing thoughts, the endless mental loops of worry, the exhaustion that comes from trying to control outcomes that belong to God alone. My friends, I began, my voice carrying the same healing tone that I want you to hear in your spirit right now. Before we can speak of sleep, we must speak of surrender. You see, insomnia is rarely just about sleep. It's about trust. It's about learning to release your grip on tomorrow and rest confidently in the love that holds both today and tomorrow in perfect hands. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. But, teacher, if I don't plan, if I don't worry about my business, what if everything falls apart? I smiled with the same gentle understanding I have for every anxiety you carry tonight. Marcus, have you ever watched a farmer plant seeds? He doesn't stand over them all night, commanding them to grow. He plants them in good soil, waters them faithfully, and then, here's the crucial part, he goes home and sleeps. He trusts the process, he trusts the seasons, and he trusts that growth happens even while he rests. Sarah nodded but added, "What about my children, Lord? How can I stop worrying about their safety, their choices, their futures?" "Oh, Sarah," I said, my heart filled with the tender love of a parent who understands. "Your love for your children is beautiful and sacred. But tell me, are they safer when you lie awake all night worrying? Or when you rest in the assurance that the same God who formed them in the womb is watching over them every moment? Your sleepless nights don't add a single hour to their lives, or remove a single danger from their paths. But your peace, your trust, your example of resting in God's care, that blesses them immeasurably." As I spoke, I watched something beautiful begin to happen. The same thing I want to happen in your heart right now. Their faces began to soften. Their shoulders began to relax. The invisible armor they had been wearing against life's uncertainties started to dissolve in the presence of perfect love. I continued, my voice growing even gentler, like a lullaby for tired souls. "You see, my beloved ones, God never intended for you to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. That's my job. You were created to walk in partnership with divine love, to work diligently during the day and rest peacefully at night, trusting that the same hands that set the stars in their courses are orchestrating the details of your life." David, the elderly man, spoke up with a voice cracked by years and sorrow. "But Lord, the pain in my body, the grief in my heart, how can I rest when everything hurts?" I moved closer to him, placing my hand gently on his shoulder, and I could feel his pain as if it were my own. David, my dear friend, pain doesn't have to prevent rest. In fact, rest is often where healing begins. When you surrender your suffering to me, when you stop fighting the pain and instead allow it to be held by perfect love, something miraculous happens. The pain may remain, but it no longer defines you. It becomes part of your story of redemption, rather than your burden of despair. As I spoke these words, I watched as peace began to descend over the entire group like a gentle snowfall. Rebecca's hands, which had been clenched in her lap, slowly relaxed and opened like flowers receiving rain. Marcus's furrowed brow smoothed as years of worry lines seemed to fade in the soft evening light. Sarah's breathing deepened and slowed, and for the first time in months, her face looked truly serene. But the most beautiful transformation was in David, as he allowed his grief to be held by love instead of fighting it alone. His tears began to flow, not tears of hopelessness, but tears of release. And with each tear, I could see years of carried pain washing away, making room for the peace that surpasses all understanding. This, I whispered to all of them, and to you right now, is the miracle of surrender. Not giving up, but giving. Over, not resignation, but trust. Not helplessness, but the recognition that you are held by love more powerful than any problem you could ever face. As the night deepened around us, I could see their eyelids growing heavy with the kind of tiredness that leads to healing sleep. But before they drifted off, I wanted to share with them and with you the deeper truth about rest that goes beyond just sleeping through the night. True rest, I said softly, begins in the heart. When your heart is at rest, your mind follows. When your mind is at peace, your body naturally follows. And when your body rests, your spirit is renewed for whatever tomorrow may bring. One by one, they began to lean back against the olive trees, their faces peaceful, their breathing slow and deep. The chronic insomniacs who had come to me in desperation were now settling into the kind of sleep they hadn't experienced in years. Not because of any medication or technique, but because they had finally learned to rest their burdens in hands stronger than their own. Can you feel it happening, dear one? The same surrender, the same release, the same peace that settled over that garden is available to you right now. Let your grip on tomorrow's worries loosen. Allow your heart to remember what it feels like to trust completely. This is how healing, sleep begins, not with your efforts to force rest, but with your willingness to be held by perfect love. As my companions in the garden settled into peaceful rest, something extraordinary began to happen that I want you to experience as well. It was as if the very air around us became infused with healing presence, not just for their sleeplessness, but for every wound, every hurt, every broken place in their spirits that had been crying out for restoration. You see, my beloved, sleep is meant to be more than just a biological function. It's designed to be a time of divine restoration when your body repairs itself, your mind processes and releases the day's experiences, and your spirit reconnects with the source of all peace. But when sleep eludes you night after night, it's often because there are deeper healings that need to take place first. As I sat with these precious souls that evening, I was reminded of another time when I encountered the healing power of perfect rest. It was during my final week before the crucifixion, and I had spent the day teaching about God's kingdom, healing the sick, and preparing my disciples for what was to come. The weight of knowing what lay ahead, the pain, the separation from the Father, the burden of humanity's sin could have easily stolen my sleep. But that night, as I retreated to a quiet place to pray, I experienced something that I want to share with you now. As I poured out my heart to the Father, acknowledging my human fears while surrendering completely to divine will, I felt what I can only describe as waves of healing peace washing over me. It wasn't just comfort, it was active restoration, divine love flowing into every anxious place, every tender spot, every area where the day's challenges had left their mark. This is what I want you to experience tonight, dear one. Not just sleep, but healing sleep. Not just rest, but restorative rest that touches every level of your being. Let me tell you about Sarah, the worried mother from our garden gathering. As she lay beneath the olive tree that night, something remarkable happened. Years of anxiety had created physical tension that she carried in her neck and shoulders, knots of stress that no massage could fully release because they were tied to spiritual wounds. But as she surrendered her children to my care, as she chose trust over worry, I watched those physical manifestations of anxiety begin to dissolve. Her breathing, which had been shallow and rapid for months, deepened and slowed. The furrow between her eyebrows, carved by countless nights of worry, began to smooth. But most beautifully, her hands, which had been clenched in protective fists, even in sleep, slowly opened like flowers. Palms turned upward in a gesture of complete surrender and trust. This wasn't just relaxation, you understand. This was healing happening in real time. The chronic headaches that had plagued her for years began to ease as the tension released. The digestive issues caused by constant stress started to calm as her nervous system finally shifted out of fight or flight mode and into rest and repair. Even her blood pressure, elevated for months by anxiety, began to normalize as divine peace infused every cell of her body. Marcus, the worried merchant, experienced his own miracle that night. For years, he had suffered from what doctors couldn't quite name: a racing heart that would wake him at 3 a.m. with panic about his business, sweating palms when he thought about his financial future, a stomach that churned with anxiety even when things were going well. But as he learned to surrender his business concerns to the one who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, his body began to remember its natural rhythm of peace. The irregular heartbeat that had sent him to the emergency room multiple times began to steady into the strong, calm rhythm of a heart at rest. The acid reflux that had plagued him for years, a direct result of chronic stress, began to heal as his digestive system finally had permission to work as God designed it. Even his immune system, weakened by months of poor sleep and constant worry, began to strengthen as healing sleep restored his body's natural defenses. But perhaps the most profound healing I witnessed that night was in David, the elderly man carrying decades of grief. His pain wasn't just emotional. Years of sorrow had literally changed his body's chemistry, creating inflammation in his joints, weakening his bones, and stealing the vitality that should have marked his golden years. As he allowed his grief to be held by perfect love instead of carrying it alone, something beautiful began to happen. The inflammatory markers in his blood, elevated for years by chronic stress and unprocessed sorrow, began to normalize. The arthritis pain that had kept him awake many nights started to ease as divine anti-inflammatory began to flow through his system. Even his bone density, decreased by years of stress hormones, began to strengthen as his body finally had permission to heal rather than just survive. And Rebecca, carrying years of regret and self-condemnation, experienced healing in ways she never expected. The chronic fatigue that had plagued her, not from physical exertion, but from the exhausting work of carrying shame and regret, began to lift as forgiveness washed over her like healing rain. The insomnia that had stolen her rest for years dissolved as she learned to rest in unconditional love rather than lie awake rehearsing her failures. But here's what I want you to understand most deeply, my dear one. These healings didn't happen because these people were somehow special or deserving. They happened because healing is the natural result when perfect love meets human surrender. When you stop fighting life and start trusting love, your body remembers how to heal. When you release control and embrace divine care, your nervous system shifts from survival mode to restoration mode. As I watched over my sleeping friends that night, I was filled with such joy to see their faces peaceful for the first time in months or even years. The worry lines were smoothing, the tension was melting away, and even in sleep, you could see the evidence of deep healing taking place. Their color was better, their breathing was deeper, and there was a quality of rest that spoke of restoration, happening at the cellular level. This is what I want for you tonight, beloved. Not just a few hours of unconsciousness, but healing sleep that restores your body, renews your mind, and refreshes your spirit. Sleep that doesn't just give you energy for tomorrow, but actually heals the damage that stress and worry have done to your system. Rest that doesn't just pause your problems, but transforms your capacity to handle whatever life brings. You don't have to earn this healing, dear one. You don't have to be perfect, or have all the answers, or fix all your problems first. You simply have to do what Sarah and Marcus and David and Rebecca learned to do that night in the garden. Surrender, release, trust, let go, and let God. The same healing presence that flowed through that garden 2,000 years ago is flowing toward you right now. Can you feel it? It's not dependent on your circumstances changing or your problems being solved. It's dependent only on your willingness to be loved, to be held, to be healed by the one who formed you, knows you, and cherishes you beyond measure. As you lie there now, imagine those healing waters of peace flowing over you, through you, around you. Let them wash away not just today's tensions, but the accumulated stress of months or years. Allow your body to remember what it feels like to be at peace, your mind to experience what true calm feels like, your spirit to rest in perfect love. The healing is beginning even now, dear one. Just rest and receive. As the night deepened in our sacred garden, I found myself reflecting on all the restless souls I had encountered throughout my earthly ministry, and all those I continue to encounter today, including you, precious one. There's something profoundly moving about watching someone discover true rest for the first time in years. Seeing their face transform as divine peace replaces human anxiety. I want to tell you about another night, several months before that. Gathering in the olive garden, I had been traveling through Samaria, and the day had been particularly challenging. I had encountered the woman at the well. You may know her story, and through our conversation, an entire village had come to understand living water for the first time. But ministry, even joyful ministry, can be exhausting for the human heart. As evening approached, I found myself needing solitude, needing connection with my Father, needing the restoration that only comes from perfect communion with divine love. I walked away from the village to a quiet hillside where ancient olive trees created natural prayer chambers, their silver leaves whispering secrets of centuries of faithful endurance. It was there, as I settled into prayer, that I experienced one of the most profound lessons about rest that I want to share with you now. You see, even I, in my humanity, sometimes felt the weight of humanity's pain so deeply that it threatened to overwhelm my human heart. The loneliness of people like you, the desperation of the sleepless, the anxiety of parents, the grief of the bereaved. I carried it all, felt it all, absorbed it into my very being. But that night on the hillside, as I poured out my heart to the Father, I was reminded of a profound truth. Rest isn't just about emptying ourselves of burdens. True rest comes from filling ourselves so completely with divine love that there's no room left for fear, anxiety, or despair. Imagine, if you will, a well that has become contaminated with muddy, bitter water. You could spend forever trying to scoop out the bad water, bucket by bucket, and never fully succeed. But if you connect that well to a spring of pure, sweet water and let it flow continuously, the pure water will naturally displace the contaminated water until only sweetness remains. This is what divine rest does for your soul, dear one. It doesn't just remove your anxieties and worries. It fills you so completely with peace that anxiety has no place to take root. It doesn't just take away your fears, it floods you with such confidence in divine love that fear becomes impossible to maintain. As I experienced this truth that night on the hillside, I felt myself being filled, from the depths of my being to the surface of my consciousness, with such profound peace that every human concern seemed to dissolve into insignificance. Not because the concerns weren't real or important, but because they were held within something infinitely larger and more powerful than themselves. This is the gift I want to give you tonight. Not just relief from your sleeplessness, but such a complete filling of divine peace that insomnia becomes impossible. Not just a temporary respite from your worries, but such a deep wells of comfort within your soul that anxiety finds no place to lodge. Let me share with you how this transformation happened for each of my friends in the garden that night, because I want you to recognize it when it begins happening in your own heart. Sarah, the worried mother, discovered that when her heart was filled with trust in divine love for her children, there simply wasn't room for the anxious thoughts that used to circle endlessly through her mind. It wasn't that she stopped caring about her children. Her love for them actually deepened and purified. But that love was now grounded in confidence rather than fear, rooted in trust rather than anxiety. Marcus found that when his understanding of divine provision filled his consciousness, his business worries naturally faded into proper perspective. He still worked diligently and made wise decisions, but from a place of peace rather than panic, from trust rather than terror. The obsessive mental rehearsals of worst-case scenarios simply had no space to exist when his mind was filled with awareness of infinite abundance and perfect timing. David's experience was perhaps the most profound. For years, his heart had been like a house with all the rooms filled with grief. There was simply no space for joy, hope, or peace to enter. But as he allowed divine love to flow into those grief-filled spaces, something beautiful happened. The grief didn't disappear. His love for those he had lost remained as strong as ever. But the grief was transformed from a bitter, isolating pain into a sweet, connecting love that actually enhanced his capacity for peace rather than destroying it. And Rebecca discovered that when her identity became rooted in unconditional divine love, rather than in her performance or her past, the shame and regret that had filled her mental and emotional space for years simply dissolved. Not because her past changed, but because her understanding of her worth changed so completely that past failures became irrelevant to her present peace. This is what I'm offering you tonight, beloved child. Not just a good night's sleep, but a complete renovation of your inner landscape. Not just rest for your body, but such a deep filling of divine peace that restlessness becomes foreign to your experience. As you lie there now, I want you to imagine your heart as that well I described earlier. Perhaps it has been filled with contaminated water for so long that you've forgotten what pure water tastes like. Maybe anxiety has been your normal for so many years that you can barely remember what peace feels like. Perhaps worry has been your constant companion for so long that silence in your mind seems impossible. But now, right now, imagine the spring of living water that is my love for you beginning to flow into that well of your heart. Don't try to scoop out the old water, just let the new water flow. Let it fill every space, every corner, every hidden cavern of your inner being. Feel it displacing the anxiety with peace, the worry with trust, the fear with love, the restlessness with deep, abiding calm. This isn't something you have to work for or earn or achieve. This is something that happens naturally when you simply open your heart and allow perfect love to fill you completely. Like water finding its level, divine peace will find every anxious place in your soul and bring it into harmony with heaven's rest. Can you feel it beginning, dear one? That sense of being filled rather than emptied, of expansion rather than depletion, of abundance rather than lack. This is how true rest begins, not with the absence of problems, but with the presence of infinite love. Let it fill you now, let it overflow, let it be the last thing you're aware of as healing sleep embraces you with tender arms. In those precious moments before dawn touched the garden where my weary friends slept so peacefully, I experienced something that I want to share intimately with you now. As I kept watch over them, just as I keep watch over you every single night, I became aware of the sacred rhythm that governs all of creation. The divine heartbeat that pulses through everything from the movement of galaxies to the breath in your lungs right now. There is a rhythm to divine rest that goes deeper than the simple cycle of day and night, though that natural pattern reflects this deeper truth. It's the rhythm of receiving and giving, of filling and pouring out, of work and worship, of effort and surrender. When you align with this sacred rhythm, sleep becomes not just a biological necessity, but a spiritual discipline, a return to the source of all life and peace. I remember watching Sarah's breathing as she slept, how it had naturally synchronized with the gentle rhythm of the night breeze through the olive leaves. Her body had remembered something her anxious mind had forgotten, how to move in harmony with divine timing rather than fighting against it. For months, she had been running on anxiety's frantic pace, trying to control outcomes on her timeline rather than trusting in perfect timing. But now, in sleep, she was learning to breathe with heaven's rhythm again. This is what I want for you, dear one. Not just to fall asleep, but to fall into rhythm with divine peace. To let your heartbeat sync with the pulse of unconditional love. Your breathing align with the rhythm of perfect trust. Your very cells vibrate in harmony with the frequency of heaven itself. Marcus, even in his deep sleep, was learning this sacred rhythm. For years, his internal clock had been set to anxiety time, always running late, always behind, always trying to catch up with his fears about the future. But as divine peace settled over him that night, I watched his entire being begin to move in sync with eternal time, where there is space for everything that truly matters and no rush toward things that don't serve love. You see, beloved, anxiety operates on the assumption that there isn't enough, not enough time, not enough resources, not enough love, not enough grace. It creates a sense of urgency about everything, making even rest feel like another item on an impossible to-do list. But divine rest operates from abundance, from the deep knowing that there is enough of everything you truly need, and that everything you need will come in perfect timing. David's transformation that night showed me something beautiful about this rhythm. His grief had kept him trapped in the past, reliving moments of loss over and over, while his anxiety pulled him into fear about the future. But as he settled into divine rest, he found himself naturally settling into the present moment, the only place where peace actually exists, the only time that is truly real. In the sacred rhythm of divine rest, the past becomes a place of gratitude rather than regret, the future becomes a space of trust rather than fear, and the present becomes a sanctuary where you can actually experience the love that has always been surrounding you. This is why sleep has been so elusive for you, dear one, not because there's something wrong with your body or your brain, but because you've been trying to rest while living outside of divine rhythm. But tonight, right now, I'm inviting you back into that sacred rhythm. Feel your heartbeat slowing, matching the steady pulse of my love for you. Notice your breathing deepening, synchronizing with the rhythm of divine breath that first filled your lungs when you were formed in your mother's womb. Sense your entire being beginning to vibrate in harmony with the frequency of heaven itself. Rebecca's healing that night taught me something profound about forgiveness and rest. She had been living in the exhausting rhythm of self-condemnation, constantly replaying her failures, always trying to earn her way back into worthiness. But as divine rest settled over her, she discovered the rhythm of grace, the gentle, consistent, never-failing beat of unconditional love that says, "You are beloved, you are forgiven, you are enough, you are home." This is the rhythm that heals insomnia at its root, precious child. When you try to earn your rest, you'll never truly find it. When you try to deserve peace, you'll always fall short. But when you simply receive rest as a gift, when you accept peace as your birthright, as God's beloved child, your entire system naturally aligns with the rhythm of divine love. As the hours passed in our garden sanctuary, I watched something beautiful happen to each of my sleeping friends. Their sleep wasn't just unconsciousness, it was active restoration. Their bodies were healing, their minds were processing and releasing the day's stresses, their spirits were being renewed and refreshed. But more than that, they were learning to trust the rhythm of divine care that continues even when they're not conscious to direct it. This is one of the most difficult lessons for anxious hearts to learn, that God's love for you doesn't depend on your vigilance, that divine protection doesn't require your constant worry, that the most important work in your life often happens while you sleep. Your body repairs itself while you rest. Your mind processes and integrates while you dream. Your spirit communes with divine love while your conscious defenses are down. Right now, as you prepare to enter this sacred rhythm of divine rest, I want you to know that nothing you need to control requires your consciousness tonight. Your heart will keep beating without your management. Your immune system will continue its healing work without your supervision. The people you love are held in the same divine care that holds you, and that care doesn't sleep, doesn't slumber, never takes a break. This is the ultimate act of faith, dear one. To close your eyes and trust that divine love will handle everything that needs handling while you rest. To surrender consciousness and trust that you'll wake up in the morning more whole, more healed, more restored than when you went to sleep. Feel yourself settling into this sacred rhythm now, beloved. Let your breathing slow to match the gentle rhythm of divine love. Allow your heartbeat to sync with the pulse of heaven itself. Trust the ancient rhythm of rest and restoration that has been waiting patiently for you to stop fighting and start receiving. You are safe. You are loved. You are held. It's time to rest. As the first hint of dawn began to touch the eastern horizon of our garden sanctuary, I remained watchful over my sleeping friends. marveling at the transformation that a single night of divine rest had brought to their faces, their bodies, their very presence. This is what I want you to know as you settle into your own healing sleep, that you will not wake up unchanged. True rest in divine love always brings transformation. Sarah's face, which had carried the weight of maternal anxiety for so many months, now glowed with peaceful trust. Even in sleep, you could see that something fundamental had shifted in her spirit. The worry lines had softened, yes, but more than that, there was a quality of surrender in her expression that spoke of deep inner healing. She would wake up tomorrow not with her problems solved, but with her heart transformed in its relationship to those challenges. Marcus lay curled peacefully beneath his olive tree, his businessman's hands finally relaxed and open. For the first time in years, his sleep wasn't fitful or interrupted by anxiety dreams about financial ruin. His breathing was deep and even, his face serene with the kind of trust that only comes when you finally understand that you're not carrying the world alone. When morning came, he would still face the same business decisions, but from a foundation of peace rather than panic. David's transformation was perhaps the most visible. The grief that had carved deep lines around his eyes for years seemed to have been gently smoothed by perfect love. His sleep was so profound, so restorative, that you could actually see color returning to his complexion. The chronic pain that had kept him awake so many nights had been replaced by the deep rest of a body, finally able to heal rather than merely survive. And Rebecca, oh, how beautiful she looked in her peaceful slumber. The self-condemnation that had been etched in her features for years had been washed away by waves of divine forgiveness. Her hands, which had been clenched even in previous attempts at sleep, now rested open and receptive, as if ready to receive whatever gifts the new day would bring. As I watched over them in those pre-dawn hours, I was filled with such joy at the promise of their morning. They would wake up refreshed, yes, but also renewed. Not because their circumstances had magically changed overnight, but because they had learned the secret of resting in divine love, regardless of their circumstances. They had discovered that peace isn't dependent on having all the answers, but on trusting the one who holds all the answers. This is my promise to you, beloved child, as you prepare to enter your own healing sleep. You will not wake up unchanged. The rest you're about to receive isn't just physical restoration, it's spiritual renewal, emotional healing, mental clarity, and divine empowerment for whatever tomorrow may bring. When you wake up tomorrow morning, you may still face the same challenges that kept you awake tonight, but you'll face them with a heart that has been filled with divine peace, a mind that has been renewed by perfect love, and a spirit that has been restored by communion with your Creator. The problems may be the same, but you will be transformed. You'll wake up with a deeper understanding of your worth, not based on your performance or your problems, but rooted in unconditional divine love. You'll rise with renewed strength, not from your own efforts, but from having been filled with divine power while you slept. You'll greet the day with fresh perspective, not because you've figured everything out, but because you've learned to trust the one who has everything figured out. And here's the most beautiful part of this promise. As you continue to practice this sacred art of resting in divine love, as you make this deep surrender a regular part of your nights, the transformation will continue to deepen. Each night of healing sleep will build upon the last. Each morning you'll wake up a little more whole, a little more peaceful, a little more confident in the love that will never let you go. The insomnia that has plagued you, the anxiety that has stolen your rest, the worries that have kept you awake, they don't have to define your nights anymore. You've learned a new way, discovered a deeper truth, been introduced to the rest that surpasses all understanding. As the first birds began their morning songs in our garden sanctuary, I watched my friends begin to stir naturally, their faces still glowing with the peace of divine rest. They would carry this experience with them, this knowing of what true rest feels like, this assurance that they never have to face another sleepless night alone. And neither do you, precious one. This isn't just a story I'm telling you. This is an invitation I'm extending to you. A gift I'm offering you. A promise I'm making to you. Every night can be like that night in the garden. Every sleep can be healing sleep. Every rest can be divine rest. The promise of your morning is already written in the stars, dear child. It's written in love, sealed with grace, and guaranteed by the one who never slumbers or sleeps in his care for you. Rest. Now in that promise, let it be the last thought you hold as healing sleep embraces you. Your transformed morning awaits. My dearest, most beloved child, as our sacred night together draws to a close, I want you to carry this truth with you into all your tomorrows. This gift of divine rest isn't just for tonight. This peace that has settled over your heart isn't temporary. This healing sleep you're about to experience isn't a one-time miracle. Every single night, I am here waiting for you. Every time you lie down to rest, this same invitation stands open. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Not just physical rest, but soul rest. Not just sleep, but healing. Not just unconsciousness, but divine communion. You never have to earn this gift. You never have to deserve this peace. You never have to solve all your problems or fix all your flaws before you're worthy of divine rest. This is my gift to you simply because you are mine, simply because you are loved, simply because I delight in your well-being. Remember this night, precious one. Remember how it felt to finally let go, to surrender completely, to rest in perfect love. Remember that this experience is always available to you, always waiting for you, always ready to embrace you with healing arms. The sleepless nights are over. The anxious hours are finished. You have learned the secret of divine rest, and that knowledge will carry you peacefully through all your nights to come. Sleep now, beloved. Sleep deeply. Sleep healing sleep. Sleep in the arms of infinite love. Until we meet again in tomorrow's garden of peace, rest in my love. Forever and always, you are cherished, you are held, you are home. Sweet dreams, my precious child. Sweet healing, transformative dreams.